I never planned for it to happen that night. If I had known what one small, stupid decision would turn into, I probably would have gone to bed early and kept my door locked like I usually did. But life doesn't work like that, and neither does attraction, especially when it sneaks up on you wearing gym shorts and pretending to be straight. The thing about living with someone is that you learn their rhythms before you learn their secrets. I've been sharing a two-bedroom apartment with Ethan for almost 8 months. Mid-20s, finance job downtown, former college athlete. The kind of guy who somehow always smelled clean even after a workout. He moved in after my last roommate bailed on the lease, and from day one it was easy. Too easy. We weren't best friends. We weren't strangers either. We existed in that comfortable middle ground, shared groceries sometimes, watched games together, bitched about work, passed out on opposite ends of the couch after too many beers. Normal roommate stuff. And he was straight. Or at least, that's what I told myself. Ethan talked about women casually. Never in detail, never emotionally. Just enough to establish the label. I didn't ask questions. I didn't want answers I couldn't unhear. I'd been out since college, but I'd also learned how to keep things neatly boxed up when they weren't going anywhere. So yeah, I noticed things. The way he walked around shirtless like it was nothing. The way his voice dropped when he was tired. The way he stood a little too close sometimes when he talked. But noticing didn't mean acting. It just meant surviving. That night started like any other. It was a Thursday, which meant leftover Chinese food and whatever was on Netflix. I came home late from work, kicked off my shoes, and found Ethan sprawled on the couch, one arm behind his head, the other lazily flipping through options. "You eating that?" he asked, nodding at the bag in my hand. "Only if you're not," I said. He smirked. "I already ate, but I could eat again." Typical. We sat there, shoulders almost touching, plates balanced on our laps. Some dumb action movie played in the background, explosions and bad dialogue filling the space, so we didn't have to. At some point, he laughed and nudged my knee with his. Not hard, just enough to be familiar. I told myself it didn't mean anything. Around midnight, I stood up and stretched, my back cracking. "I'm crashing. Early meeting." "Yeah," he said, not looking away from the screen. "Night, man." I went into my room, shut the door, and lay there staring at the ceiling longer than I'd admit to anyone. I could still hear the TV through the wall, muffled but constant. Familiar. Safe. I must have fallen asleep at some point because the next thing I remember was waking up with that strange, heavy awareness that something was off. Not a noise, not a dream, just that instinctual sense that you're not alone. My room was dark, the faint orange glow of the streetlight slipping through the blinds. I shifted, confused, and that's when I felt at the dip in the mattress behind me. Wait, warmth. My heart slammed into my ribs. For a split second, I thought I was dreaming. Sleep paralysis, maybe. My body felt heavy, my thoughts slow. Then I heard breathing. Real, steady breathing. Close. I didn't move. I didn't even breathe. Slowly, carefully, I turned my head just enough to see the outline of a body behind me. Ethan, sitting on the edge of my bed. Every thought in my head collided at once. Why was he here? Was something wrong? Did I forget to lock the door? My pulse was so loud I was sure he could hear it. Then his hand touched my arm. Not grabbing, not shaking me awake, just resting there, warm and solid, like he'd done it 100 times before. "Hey," he whispered, barely louder than the hum of the city outside. "You awake?" I swallowed, my throat dry. I should have lied. I should have told him to get out. I should have asked what the hell he was doing. Instead, I said, "Yeah." There was a pause. A long one. I could feel the tension in the room, thick and fragile, like one wrong move would shatter it. "Sorry," he said quietly. I didn't know where else to go. That's when I knew. Whatever this was, it wasn't accidental. And it definitely wasn't going to be simple. I sat up slowly, pulling the sheet around my waist more out of instinct than modesty. My brain was still lagging behind my body, trying to catch up to the fact that my straight roommate was sitting on my bed in the middle of the night like this was normal. "Where else to go?" I asked quietly. Ethan rubbed his hands together, elbows resting on his knees. Up close, I could see the tension in him, the tight jaw, the way his shoulders were hunched forward instead of relaxed like usual. "I couldn't sleep," he said. "Tried the couch. Tried pacing. Tried everything. He let out a breath that sounded almost like a laugh. I know this is weird. That was an understatement. You could have knocked, I said, not unkindly. I did, he replied. Twice. You didn't answer. That stopped me. I honestly didn't remember hearing anything, but that didn't matter now. What mattered was that he was here, inches away, and neither of us was moving. Silence stretched between us again, the kind that presses on your ears. Did something happen? I asked. He nodded, then shook his head, then nodded again like he couldn't decide. Not exactly. It's more like something's been happening. For a while. My stomach tightened. I waited. Ethan finally looked at me, really looked at me, and there was something raw in his expression I'd never seen before. This wasn't the confident guy from the couch. This was someone stripped down to nerves. I think there's something wrong with me, he said. I blinked. What? He ran a hand through his hair, exhaling sharply. I can't stop thinking about you. The words landed heavy, knocking the air out of my chest. That's a hell of a thing to say, I managed. I know, he said quickly. I know. And I'm not trying to mess with you, or lead you on, or whatever. I just dashed, he stopped, jaw clenching. I don't know what I am right now. I'd replayed versions of this conversation in my head 1,000 times. Fantasized about it on my worst nights. None of those imagined scenarios prepared me for how quiet and uncertain he sounded. How long? I asked. He hesitated. Couple months. Maybe longer. I let out a slow breath. And you're just realizing this now? No, he said. I'm just done pretending it'll go away. That honesty did something to me. Something dangerous. I shifted closer without meaning to. The bed creaked softly, the sound absurdly loud in the quiet room. Ethan noticed. His eyes flicked down, then back up to my face. You don't have to say anything, he said. I shouldn't even be here. I needed to tell someone before I lost my mind. I laughed under my breath, more disbelief than humor. You picked a hella time. Yeah, he said. I'm sorry. Another pause. This one different. Charged. You're not broken, I said finally. He looked at me like that mattered. But I continued, you don't get to drop something like that on me and act like it doesn't mean anything. I know, he said. That's why I'm freaking out. I studied his face, the familiar lines suddenly unfamiliar in this context. This wasn't a drunk confession. He was sober, clear-eyed, terrified. You're straight, I said softly. He swallowed. That's what I thought. And now? His voice was barely audible. Now I don't know. My heart was racing, but there was also a strange calm settling in. A clarity. I could say no. I should say no. This was messy and complicated and risky in ways I understood too well. But I also knew what it felt like to be alone with feelings you didn't ask for. I reached out before I could overthink it, resting my hand over his. He stiffened for half a second, then relaxed. That doesn't mean we jump into anything, I said. It means we talk. Slowly. He nodded immediately. Yeah, I want that. Our hands stayed there, touching, neither of us moving away. The contact felt loud, electric, like a promise we weren't ready to make. After a moment, he pulled his hand back, standing abruptly. I should go. I nodded. Probably. He lingered at the door, turning back to look at me one last time. Thanks for not freaking out. I gave a small smile. Give me time. I might still. He huffed a quiet laugh, then slipped out, closing the door gently behind him. I lay back down, staring at the ceiling again, heart pounding harder than before. Because now everything had changed. And this was only the beginning. I didn't sleep after that. Not really. I lay there replaying every word, every look, every tiny pause like it might change if I examined it from the right angle. Ethan sitting on my bed, his hand on my arm. The way his voice cracked when he said my name. By the time my alarm went off, I felt like I'd lived a whole other life overnight. The apartment was quiet when I stepped out of my room. Too quiet. No te ve murmuring. No confibruin. His door was shut. Good, I told myself. Space is good. I showered, got dressed, went through the motions like everything was normal, except nothing was. Every sound made my pulse jump. When I finally grabbed my keys and left, I didn't see him. I spent the entire day useless at work. Emails blurred together. Meetings went in one ear and out the other. Every time my phone buzzed, my chest tightened, but it was never him. By lunch, I was annoyed at myself for being disappointed. That night, I came home late on purpose. Ethan's car was already there. My stomach flipped. I walked inside, dropped my bag, and froze when I saw him in the kitchen. He was leaning against the counter, beer in hand, like he'd been waiting but didn't want to admit it. "Hey," he said. "Hey." We stood there like idiots, 5 feet apart, pretending the air wasn't thick with everything we hadn't said. He looked tired, not physically emotionally, like he'd been carrying something heavy all day. "How was work?" he asked. "Fine," I said. "Yours?" He shrugged. Long. Another pause. "I didn't mean to mess things up," he said finally. I met his eyes. "You didn't." He studied my face like he was searching for cracks. "You sure?" "No," I admitted. "But that's not on you alone." That earned a small, relieved exhale. We ended up on opposite ends of the couch, the same distance we'd kept for months, but it felt deliberate now. Every movement was careful, like we were learning new rules without a guidebook. "I haven't told anyone," he said suddenly. "About?" I asked, though I knew. "About questioning everything," he said. "You're the only one who knows." That landed heavier than I expected. "Why me?" I asked. He didn't answer right away. Then, quietly, "Because you don't bullshit me." I laughed softly. That's one way to put it. The TV played, but neither of us watched. At some point, his knee brushed mine. He noticed immediately, pulled back, then hesitated. "You don't have to dash," I started. "I know," he said. "I just wanted to see if it still felt like something." And he looked at me. Honest. Open. "Yeah, it does." I nodded slowly. "Then we take it slow." "I want that," he said, "even if it scares the hell out of me." We sat there for hours, talking in pieces. About his past relationships. About mine. About labels and fear and how easy it is to lie to yourself when the truth feels inconvenient. At some point, he admitted, "I've been watching you for longer than I want to admit." That made my throat tighten. Doing what? Wondering what it'd be like if I didn't stop myself. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. The silence said enough. When it got late, I stood up. "I'm going to bed." He nodded. "Yeah, me too." We stood there again, awkward and charged, neither of us quite ready to end the night. "Hey," he said as I turned away. "Yeah, thank you for being patient with me." I smiled, small but real. "Just don't waste it." That night, I slept better than the last, but not because my mind was quiet. Because for the first time, the tension felt like it was going somewhere. The next week felt like walking around with a live wire under my skin. Nothing happened not in the way you'd expect, but everything was different. The space between us wasn't empty anymore. It was intentional, charged, like we were both aware that one wrong move could either ruin everything or finally make it honest. Ethan stopped bringing dates home. Not dramatically, not announced, he just didn't. Instead, we cooked together more, talked longer, sat closer without quite touching. Sometimes I caught him watching me when he thought I wasn't looking. Sometimes I let him see that I noticed. One night, a few days later, we were both in the kitchen late, sharing a bottle of wine neither of us had bought for a special occasion. Rain tapped softly against the windows, the city blurred into lights and shadows outside. "This feels dangerously domestic," I said, nodding at the half-cooked pasta and the shared bottle. He smiled. "Yeah, weirdly comforting." We ate leaning against the counter, shoulders brushing. Not accidental this time. Deliberate. I didn't move away. Neither did he. "I keep waiting for the other shoe to drop," he admitted. "Like I'll wake up and this will feel wrong." "And does it?" I asked. He shook his head slowly. "No, that's the problem." I studied him for a moment. "It doesn't have to be a problem." He met my gaze, something intense flickering there. "It kind of does when it changes how I see everything." "Change isn't the same as loss," I said. "Sometimes it's just clarity." He exhaled like that helped. Maybe it did. After dinner, we ended up on the couch again. Same spots as before, but closer. Our thighs touched, stayed touching. The TV droned on, forgotten. "I've never felt this aware of another person," he said quietly. "Welcome to my world," I replied. He laughed softly, then grew serious. "Can I ask you something?" "Always dangerous," I said. "But go ahead. What happens if I screw this up?" I turned to face him fully. Then we deal with it. Like adults. But you don't get to borrow trouble before it exists. He nodded. Then, almost shyly, is it okay if I... He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. Yeah, I said. It is. His hand came to rest on my knee. Warm. Steady. He didn't rush. Just let it be there. Like he was proving to himself that the world wouldn't end. When he leaned in, it wasn't dramatic. No sudden crash. Just a slow, hesitant closing of distance, giving me every chance to pull away. I didn't. The kiss was soft. Careful. More question than statement. When we pulled back, his forehead rested against mine. I'm not freaking out, he said, almost surprised. Good, I whispered. Because neither am I. We didn't take it further that night. We didn't need to. The line had been crossed gently, deliberately, with both eyes open. When he finally went to his room, he paused at my door. Hey, yeah. Thank you for trusting me with this. I smiled. Don't make me regret it. He smiled back. And this time, it reached his eyes. After that kiss, things didn't explode the way movies make you think they should. They settled. And somehow, that was more terrifying. The next morning, I woke up to the smell of coffee. Real coffee, not the sad instant stuff I kept around for emergencies. I lay there for a second, staring at the ceiling, wondering if I'd imagined everything. Then I heard his voice. Hey, don't panic, but I might have used your good beans. I smiled into my pillow. While I walked into the kitchen, Ethan looked up like he'd been caught doing something illegal. He was already dressed for work, tie loosened, hair still damp from the shower. He held out a mug like a peace offering. No awkward energy, he said quickly. I promise. I took the mug. You say that like you've rehearsed it. Maybe, he admitted. I didn't want to make this weird. It's already weird, I said, but not bad weird. Relief crossed his face. Subtle, but there. We stood there sipping coffee, not touching, not avoiding it either. Just existing in this new version of us. On the way out, he hesitated by the door. Text me later? I raised an eyebrow. We live together. I know, he said, smiling. Still, that was the first thing that made my chest tighten that day. The text started small. Memes. Complaints about coworkers. A random, this made me think of you, with a screenshot of some dumb tweet. Nothing heavy but constant. By the end of the week, it felt natural. Like this was just how it had always been, and we'd only just caught up. Friday night, he came home earlier than usual. I was on the couch, half watching something I'd already seen twice. Busy, he asked. Not even a little. He kicked off his shoes and sat beside me. Close. Our shoulders touched immediately, like we'd both stopped pretending that distance was necessary. I canceled plans tonight, he said. Oh, yeah. Figured I'd rather be here. My pulse picked up. With me? He nodded. If that's okay. I turned toward him fully. More than okay. He smiled, then hesitated. Can we talk about expectations? That caught me off guard in a good way. Sure, I said. What kind? I don't want to rush, he said. And I don't want to hide. I'm still figuring things out, but I don't want to hurt you by pretending this is casual if it's not. I took that in. I don't need labels right now. I need honesty. And consistency. I can do that, he said immediately. Then softer, I want... That mattered. We moved closer, legs tangled, his arms settling around my shoulders like it had always belonged there. The kiss that followed was deeper than the first, less cautious, but still controlled like we were both aware of how much was at stake. At some point, his forehead rested against my temple. I don't think I can unfeel this. Good, I said quietly, because I don't want you to... Later that night, when we finally pulled apart, he didn't go to his room right away. He stayed, head resting on my chest, listening to my heartbeat like he was memorizing it. I'm scared, he admitted. I know, I said, running my fingers through his hair. So am I. But neither of us moved, because fear felt a lot less powerful when we were like this together, choosing it. If the first week felt like tension, the second felt like gravity. It was the small things that got me most. Ethan reaching for my hand without thinking when we crossed the street. The way he'd lean in to talk, voice lower, more intimate. How he started using we without realizing it. And how, every night, he ended up in my room. Not sleeping overnight yet. Just lingering. talking until the conversations blurred into something softer, more honest than either of us was used to. One night, after a couple beers and too much honesty, he sat on the edge of my bed again. Same spot as that first night. Different energy. "Do you remember the first time you realized you like guys?" he asked suddenly. I smiled faintly. "You're really going for the deep cuts tonight." "I'm serious," he said. "I feel like I skipped a chapter everyone else read." I leaned back against my pillows. I was 16. Best friend. Locker room crush. Whole Klitschkrut Korea package. He nodded slowly. "Was it terrifying?" "Yes," I said. "And also relieving. Because once you name something, it stops owning you." He stared at the floor for a long moment. "I've spent my whole life assuming attraction had rules. And now I'm breaking all of them," he said, meeting my eyes. "And I don't want to stop." That was the first night he kissed me like he meant it. Not careful, not tentative, just there. I pulled him closer, my hands gripping his shirt like I needed the anchor. He kissed back hard, like he'd been holding himself back for months, and finally let go. When he pulled away, breathing uneven, he rested his forehead against mine. "Tell me if I'm moving too fast." "You're not," I said. "You're finally moving it all." That night, he stayed. We didn't sleep much. Not because of anything physical, we still hadn't crossed that line, but because we talked until dawn. About everything. His fears. My boundaries. What this could become if we let it. "I don't want to be your experiment," I said quietly at one point. He looked almost offended. "You're not. You're the reason I'm asking questions in the first place." That settled something in me. The first time we actually crossed the line happened a few nights later. No dramatic build-up. No alcohol. Just a quiet Tuesday, rain tapping against the windows again, him standing in my doorway like he was making a choice. "Can I stay?" he asked. I nodded. "Yeah." This time, when he kissed me, there was no hesitation left. He touched me like he'd already learned my shape, like instinct had taken over where fear used to live. After, he lay beside me, staring at the ceiling, chest rising and falling steadily. "I don't feel confused," he said softly. I turned toward him. "What do you feel?" "Certain," he said. Then, after a pause, "About you." That word certain hit harder than anything else. The next morning, he didn't rush out of my room. He kissed me before work. Casually, like it was already normal. And that's when it hit me. This wasn't just something happening to us. It was something we were choosing. The first real test came sooner than I expected. It wasn't some dramatic coming out scene or a confrontation in the living room. It was a text. "Ethan, hey, can we talk when I get home?" Those 7 words sat heavy in my chest all afternoon. When he walked through the door that evening, I could tell something was off. Not panic-focused, determined even. He set his keys down carefully, like he didn't want the sound to interrupt whatever was forming in his head. "I told my sister," he said. Just like that. I blinked. "You what?" "She called on my lunch break," he explained. "Asked if I was seeing anyone." He almost lied. And then I didn't. My heart kicked hard. And he smiled, nervous but genuine. She said, "About time you stopped overthinking everything." Then she asked when she gets to meet you. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. "Seriously?" "Seriously," he said. She knew before I did. Apparently, I've been obvious for years. That night, something shifted. Not in a fireworks, way more like a lock quietly clicking into place. We stopped pretending this was temporary. The next few weeks unfolded in a way that felt almost domestic. Grocery runs together. Him stealing my hoodies. Me finding his socks in my room like it was the most natural thing in the world. We still had hard conversations about labels, about timing, about what this meant long-term, but none of them scared me the way uncertainty used to. One night, lying tangled together, he said, "I don't know what box I fit in." "You don't need one," I replied. "You just need to be honest." He turned to face me, eyes soft. "Then I'm honest about this. About us." The first time we went out together wasn't a big declaration. Just a low-key bar across town where no one knew us. His knee bounced under the table the whole time until I reached over and stilled it with my hand. "You okay?" I asked. He nodded. "Yeah, just doing something new." He kissed me outside afterward, under a flickering streetlight, not caring who saw. That's when it really hit me. This wasn't curiosity anymore. This was courage. Months later, Someone at a party asked how we met. Ethan answered without hesitation. We were roommates, he said, grinning at me. Turns out I was living with the person I was supposed to fall for. I laughed, shaking my head. You make it sound simple. He shrugged. It is. Once you stop lying to yourself. Sometimes I think back to that first night, him sitting on the edge of my bed, terrified and unsure, and I want to tell that version of him how it turns out. How fear doesn't win. How choosing honesty can change everything. How the best love stories don't start with certainty. They start with courage.